A Ukrainian jet, a Russian base, the moment of impact. The strike shattered a fortified command node, a target valued in the tens of millions, 1,000 hours. A Ukrainian MiG-29 screamed over the Kherson frontier, just 47 feet off the deck. Its velocity pushed nearly 500 knots. The objective? A converted Russian logistics depot, now a critical hub for drone guidance hardware, a key piece of defense technology. The pilot expected resistance. He did not expect it this soon. Two sudden blooms of launch smoke erupted from a tree line ahead. Not warning shots, not probes. Full Igla launches. Two modern weapons fired less than 4 seconds apart. The first ripped past his canopy. The second drifted wide as he executed a hard left brake, a maneuver that cost him nearly 160 pounds of fuel. The air fell silent again. But those rising smoke spirals broadcast his presence across 15 miles of Russian positions. This is where military strategy is tested in real time. If the mission's very first engagement was this violent, would you press the attack or abort? 1,000 hours. The air over Kherson was flat, colorless, the kind of quiet that makes soldiers grip their weapons tighter. At just 48 feet, a Ukrainian MiG-29 slipped across the front line. The silent precision of a surgeon's blade. This was not the attack, not yet. His first task? To confirm if a nondescript warehouse, one quietly absorbed by the Russian army, was what intelligence claimed, a new relay point for lethal drones. For the first few miles, nothing. No lock tones, no radar sweeps. A dead zone in this ongoing war. Only the steady growl of two RD-33 engines pushing him at 500 knots. Then, two thin spirals of smoke lifted from the trees. Not a coordinated attack, just probing Igla fire, impatient, fired on instinct by unseen troops. The pilot banked left, then right, carving shallow arcs through the hostile air. Each turn burned another 40 pounds of fuel. His total loss climbed past 160 pounds, and the mission had barely begun. The true danger was not the missiles. It was the message those smoke columns sent. They rose like signal flares, visible for nearly 10 miles, a military update for all to see. Every Russian defense system in that radius would now be looking. Still, the cockpit was quiet. No warnings, no tracking. It was no longer calm. It was waiting. 1,000 hours. The first hard shock of danger. A Russian checkpoint hidden under a collapsed roof, fired. 3 Igla missiles in 5 seconds. No warning, no radar sweep. Just 3 raw plumes clawing upward. A brutal display of military power. It was a tactic of chaos, not precision. The pilot snapped the MiG into a maximum brake turn, 9.2 Gs. The force pinned him to his seat, his vision narrowing. He dropped to 45 feet, letting the terrain become his shield. The mission was intact, but the silence had changed. His total loss was now near 350 pounds. He was still miles from the objective. Then the sky betrayed him. The smoke trails from the launches thick, twisting wires of white stretched nearly 22 miles. Anyone watching from the Russian lines would see them. And someone was watching. A P-18 VHF radar, an old piece of warfare technology operated by a new generation of soldiers, began to pulse. Not a solid track, just intermittent returns, whispering his approximate corridor. He dipped again to 60 feet, threading between irrigation masts and low ridgelines. For a breath, it worked, until a factory roof appeared on the horizon. On it, another Igla team. Their missile was already in the air. He had no room, no terrain, no cover. The only escape was vertical. He pulled to 170 feet, bursting from the power line corridor he had used for protection. Instantly, his SPO-15 lit up like a starburst, overlapping spikes, multiple radars from the Air Force and Army, all on different bands. He was caught in the net of modern warfare. The entire sector was now awake. A question hangs in the air, a test of will for any pilot. If every hostile radar in this global conflict suddenly screamed your position, would you press the attack? The pilot's answer was an act of pure defiance. he pushed deeper into the kill box. 10 a.m. The air itself thrummed with unseen energy. In the cockpit, the SPO-15 threat receiver escalated from intermittent chirps to a steady, rising tone. A hunter's heartbeat. This wasn't background chatter. This was directed energy. A Tor M2 battery, a key component of their defense systems, had just gone active. Its beams sliced through the valley, searching. The pilot's hands moved with purpose. He called up the weapons page. A soft hydraulic click confirmed the modified JDAM-ER was armed. Battery life, 28 minutes. Time to target, a mere 90 seconds. The glide profile was calculated a 42-mile reach. It was his lifeline. But first, he had to gain altitude before the Tor M2's firing solution solidified. Then, the next phase of this modern warfare engagement began. Electronic warfare flooded the cockpit. The GPS constellation on his display fractured. 7 satellites blinked out, then 5, then 4. Below the threshold for precision. His only hope was the Ukrainian-built inertial package, a ring laser gyroscope that could hold a 10-meter drift. Without it, the weapon would go blind in 2 minutes. He slammed the throttles forward, full afterburner. The twin RD-33 engines, the heart of this military machine, erupted. 36,000 pounds of thrust tore at the airframe. The MiG-29 clawed for the sky in a high-speed yo-yo, trading 540 knots of velocity for precious altitude. Vertical speed, 280 meters per second. The stall margin shrank with every foot gained. 11,000, 9,000, 7,000. The air thinned. The jet bled airspeed like a wounded animal. 420 knots, 380, barely 200. And in that moment of vulnerability, the Tor M2 found him. A new tone sliced through the cockpit. Hard lock. A firing solution from enemy troops was imminent. 11 a.m. The release window was closing. 4 seconds left. He held his breath, wings level. Every instinct screamed to break, to evade. He fought it. A single twitch would spoil the launch. 15,000 feet. 185 knots. He pressed the pickle button. A dull, metallic punch as 28 explosive bolts fired, kicking one of the most effective modern weapons free. The bomb dropped clean. It tumbled once, then its diamond-shaped wings snapped open in a flash of white vapor, locking onto its glide path. Only then, with the package away, did the pilot fight for his life. Because the Tor M2 had already launched. A 9 M331 missile was climbing to meet him at 800 meters per second. 11 a.m. The sky ripped apart behind him. The missile detonated just 320 meters off his starboard wing. The shockwave hit the airframe. Like a steel fist. A fragment the size of a man's hand slammed into the port engine. EGT surged into the red. The pilot pulled the throttle back. He shut down the crippled engine, waiting for the fire warning that never came. A small mercy in this brutal war, but not enough to shift the odds. Then, the second cascade failure. Hydraulic pressure vanished in seconds. The main circuit flatlined to 0. The backup system plummeted to just 30%. Control inputs that were once whispers of pressure now required brute, full-arm strength. Every maneuver was now a battle. The MiG-29 was a dying beast, but the Air Force pilot was still flying. But only on the strength of Soviet-era engineering, a testament to redundant defense built into its very frame. Miles away, the JDAM-ER had already transitioned from glide to terminal dive. Its onboard computer, a marvel of defense technology, was correcting its own course. Using the inertial gyroscope, it held its drift to under 10 meters, flying blind without a solid GPS lock. A key element of this military strategy, its speed built. 280, then 300 meters per second. It carved through the roof of the Russian drone's hub. It struck with the force of a meteor, punching through 2 floors of reinforced steel and concrete, impacting the primary support column. And then, detonation. Roughly 440 pounds of explosive. This weapon wasn't designed for spectacle. It was designed for structural collapse. A textbook display of military power. The blast ripped downward, not outward, shattering load-bearing joints. vaporizing the facility's central spine. 8,000 tons of concrete and grain began a cascading failure. Floor slammed into floor, accelerating at gravitational speed, each impact doubling the force of the one before. In just over 6 seconds, the entire structure folded inward, collapsing into a dense plume of dust that rose 500 feet above the riverbank. Secondary flashes flared through the rubble as stored drone components cooked off one by one. The mission was complete. Now, he only had to survive the trip home. 11 a.m. The river city ahead erupted before he even reached its outskirts. Ola Preston, usually a maze of quiet streets, had transformed into a layered gauntlet of anti-aircraft fire, a clear sign of modern warfare. Every Zu-23 emplacement in the district seemed to ignite at once. Intersecting sheets of tracer rounds carved glowing arcs across the sky. They were not aiming at him, they were aiming around him, building moving walls of metal. The military strategy was to compress him into a predictable path. The MiG-29 dropped to 600 feet, staying just above treetop height. With one engine offline, his thrust margin was razor thin. Any climb beyond a few dozen feet risked dropping his airspeed. Below the minimum needed to stay airborne, yet every dive brought him closer to the curtain of fire. A cluster of rounds grazed the tail boom. 2 control cables were sliced through, rattling the entire frame. Another burst punctured the starboard stabilizer, sending a harsh vibration through the pedals. The cockpit filled with warning lights. A yellow hydraulic caution shifted to red, then began pulsing red. His backup circuit, already straining, slipped to roughly 1/4 of its normal pressure. Control response slowed, as if the aircraft were moving through syrup. Each roll took deliberate force. Each pitch correction bordered on a gamble. Still, he jinked. Small, sharp moves. Sharp 2G maneuvers every 2 seconds, disrupting the predictive fire control math the enemy troops were relying on. Under normal circumstances, on 2 engines, the pattern would have been routine for any Air Force pilot, but with only a single RD-33 pushing the machine, and the airframe absorbing more damage by the minute each evasive motion. Felt like balancing on the edge of a collapsing ladder. A final burst of tracers flashed across his canopy, missing by less than a truck length. He could see open terrain ahead, thin, wavering, but real. If he could reach it, he would break free of the kill zone and into the last stretch before Ukrainian airspace. 11 a.m. The city fell behind him, but the danger did not. The MiG-29 shuddered as crosswinds pushed against its wounded frame. With only a single engine, the aircraft flew like a lopsided arrow, fast enough to stay alive, slow enough that every shift in air density could tilt it off balance. Hydraulic pressure hovered at barely 1/4 of normal capacity. The control stick felt as heavy as an anchor. He nudged the rudder, countering a slow drift to the right. The damaged stabilizer protested with a grinding tremor. Airspeed settled around 460 knots, just above the minimum for stable flight with asymmetric thrust. Any lower, and he would sink into the terrain. Any higher, and the weakened airframe risked structural failure. Ahead, the terrain opened into broad fields, dotted with irrigation canals. This was the final barrier, the last 30 miles of occupied airspace. Enemy spotters, aware of the collapsing drone facility behind them, were now calling grid after grid, a desperate attempt to pin him down with their weapons. A mobile launcher fired a short-range burst. 3 quick tracers, barely guided, passed behind him and faded. A fuel warning tone buzzed through the cockpit. Internal tanks were down to the last reserves, enough for maybe 4 minutes of flight at this power setting. The pilot eased the throttle back a fraction. Fuel versus lift. A razor's edge calculation. Then, through the wavering heat haze, he saw it. The line. Not a fence, not a marker, just an empty expanse of fields where Ukrainian early warning defense systems kept a silent vigil. They were waiting for a friendly signature. His transponder painted the screen once, then locked. The frantic tone in his helmet became a steady, solid hum. 1100 hours. The MiG crossed into friendly airspace. Behind him, the column of dust from the obliterated drone hub, a key piece of military infrastructure, still rose. Hundreds of feet above the riverbank. a structure that took months to build, gone in under 6 seconds. And the aircraft that delivered the blow, battered, asymmetrical, limping on a single engine, was a testament to pure military power. It was, against all odds, still flying. The mission was over. He brought his war machine home. The dust over Sarsen drifted for hours, a fading reminder of the moment the balance of this war shifted. One Ukrainian Air Force pilot, in a machine held together by instinct and grit, he had pierced an entire network of enemy defense systems, radars, guns, and missiles, returning with one engine, failing hydraulics, and a mission complete. The Russian drone's hub he struck is now gone, wiped from the map. Its collapse silenced an entire sector of warfare. But victories like this do more than just erase coordinates. They expose the truth of modern warfare. Precision, adaptation, and the courage of troops can overcome entire layers of machinery. This is the new military strategy. Now, we want your analysis. What moment was most critical? The harrowing climb into the Tor M2 trap? The JDAM's final dive? Or the last 30 miles on a single engine? Post your thoughts below and tell us where this military update series should focus next.